Maybe you'd call her a Karen if you were the sort of person to call out Karens. Today we're going to talk about the collapsed female narcissist. Do you know a woman who seems to love being a perpetual victim? You know, someone who blames everyone else for her misery? Whether she's your mother, your wife, an ex, a friend, a relative. Have you ever met a woman who seems to sort of have lost her ability to get what she wants? If you do, let me ask you a few more questions. First, is she of a certain age? And if so, does she seem to have a sort of overinflated sense of her own self-importance? Is she ridiculously entitled, and does she require excessive and constant admiration and attention from the people around her? Does she clearly think she is more important than everyone else, even though she pretends otherwise? Might she have a tendency to sort of over-exaggerate her accomplishments and or her talents? Does she often talk about how she used to be famous or beautiful or rich? Does she seem to think she might only be able to associate with people she deems acceptable or special? Is it difficult to have a conversation with her that isn't, well, about her? Does she seem to take advantage of people and their kindnesses? Is she the kind of woman who seems to want special treatment above and beyond everyone else? And does she forget or not seem to be able to care about how people feel sometimes? Is she conceited or stuck up or arrogant? And does she always need to be the best and to have the best of everything? And what happens if you dare to criticize her? Would she get upset or angry when she doesn't get what she wants? Or when people don't treat her better than they treat everyone else? Does she always seem to have issues in her personal relationships and her friendships? And despite the fact that she tries really, really hard to seem perfect and infallible, do you ever secretly think maybe she's insecure or that she might be dealing with a lot of personal shame about who she is? If so, you might be dealing with an aging female narcissist. In fact, she may have found that she's not quite as capable of getting the same kind of narcissistic supply she's used to. This can happen for a number of reasons, such as when the narcissist's friends and family have just had enough and one by one abandoned them. Or in some cases, the narcissist loses their ability to attract new supply because they get older, they lose their looks, or because they become so incredibly self-involved that they forget how to do the whole love bombing thing, or any combination of these things. But a female narcissist really needs that supply to continue to exist, right? So what happens when she doesn't get it? Does she become a real person, or does she just sort of lose it? Let's talk about the collapsed narcissist. When a narcissist in general is unable to obtain narcissistic supply, what do you expect? Some people will call this a narcissistic crisis or a collapsed narcissist. Whatever the label is, it's a big problem, and not just for the narcissist, but also for everyone around her. For the record, I'm going to just quickly define for you what a collapsed narcissist is. It's what you get when a narcissist has stopped being able to obtain the proper amount and type of narcissistic supply they prefer. And narcissistic supply is in most cases a person that helps to bolster the narcissist's self-worth, self-esteem, their value as a human being. In essence, a collapsed narcissist will feel like they've been denied the very supply they need to exist, their proverbial life's blood. Well, this of course leads to narcissistic injury, and as the collapsed narcissist writhes helplessly in the pain of not getting what they believe they're due, whether it's meeting some big goal or just getting the admiration and praise they feel they rightly deserve, well, their whole world feels like it's falling down around them. Now, before we get into the psychology of the collapsed female narcissist, I'm going to share a quick clip of a previous video with you on how female narcissists are different than male narcissists. But stick with me because I will be back right afterward to fill you in on the psychology of the collapsed female narcissist. I read a study a while back that offered a few key findings of the major differences between male and female narcissists. And in my own experience, a lot of the findings seem to be true. So to begin with, the study said men will often use a lot of force, directly or indirectly, to sort of assert themselves and their superiority over other people, while women who are narcissists will more often take a different form. Usually they're a little bit more narcissistic injury or even seduction. What I mean is, they're more likely than males to either use the old poor me martyr act mentioned earlier, or to use their appearance and their sexuality to manipulate people into getting what they want. Some of the study findings included some really interesting and pretty telling key differences. For example, male narcissists, but not female narcissists, tend to use a face-saving tactic they call self-handicapping. This is defined as a course of action to protect or enhance one's self-evaluation in the face of an evaluation threat. What does that mean? In layman's terms, it means that male narcissists will try to appear confident, but if they fear they will fail, they will self-handicap in order to avoid having to perform at all. They will use this tactic to avoid feeling or seeming incompetent. So for example, let's say they're a tennis pro and they're going to play tennis with a new partner. Well, Well, to avoid humiliation in case the new partner wins, they might just claim that this is the first time they've ever played, or they'll feign an injury to avoid playing at all. According to the study authors, this type of manipulation is directly connected to a failure in empathic responding by the mother, resulting in both males and females developing a deficient internalized structure of self. Strategies developed to compensate for it might take on different forms in males and females, the study said. This means, according to the authors, that mothers might be responding to boys as a significant other figure, as they would their husband, and to girls as more of an extension of self. It's kind of weird, right? The study authors continue to say, as a result, each gender uses different psychological resources to cope with the same deficient internalized structure of self. The study also noted that while male narcissists are likely to actively and openly assert their superiority over others in order to dominate them and for their own self-interest, they can get away with it because it's a lot more socially acceptable for males in most societies. But this kind of behavior from females is far less tolerated, and it will not benefit them as much. So they are going to be a lot more subtle in most cases than their male counterparts with their particular brand of manipulation. It's another reason they slip under the radar so often. There are a few other points of note. Female narcissists will use their bodies to get what they want, as we mentioned, and in many cases this does include their sexuality. Female narcissists are also more likely to have an eating disorder than male narcissists, unfortunately. Female narcissists will also be more likely to have issues with getting older, and that is especially true when they tend to use their bodies or sexuality to get what they want. These women are also more likely to secure their supply sources at home by controlling their family directly and using guilt to secure control. They tend to be less openly overconfident than their male counterparts, who get a whole bunch of their overinflated confidence from inside their own heads. Females are more likely to take secret pleasure in their own perceived superiority over others. Men are more obvious about it. Female narcissists are also more likely to spend money frivolously, while males are more likely to believe that money gives them power, control, status, and related stuff. Neither concerns themselves with shame or remorse, of course. While both female and male narcissists are known to cheat, males are more likely to be serial adulterers. Females are more likely to idealize a guy and then emasculate him when they get them under their spell. Yeah. In both cases, the more their partners give, the more they want and the more they take from them. It's really an insatiable need for narcissistic supply. Male narcissists will often see their children as mostly a problem or an annoyance that gets in their way, as well as competition for the attention of their main forms of narcissistic supply, which usually includes their wives and mothers, while female narcissists are more likely to see the kids as more of an extension of self, even well into adulthood, unfortunately. So when the child does good things, narcissistic moms, they're going to take credit for it. When they do bad things or things mom doesn't like, well, she's going to take it real personally, and maybe especially when whatever they did was obviously not related to the mother or her efforts in any way at all. You know the thing, right? Where they're like, oh, you did that to hurt me and you really didn't? Yeah. On the other hand, male narcissists are likely to more openly treat other men as rivals or competition, while females will more likely go nose to nose with other women in a more underhanded way, which often resembles friendship to the untrained eye. In other words, they are lifelong mean girls. So let's talk about the psychology of the collapsed female narcissist. They will quickly find themselves losing their self-esteem, and in so many ways their self-image is nearly erased. They begin to self-devalue and self-doubt. They literally hate themselves to the point that they project this self-hate onto everyone else around them. Since everyone hates the narcissist, they reason, the narcissist, well, she might as well hate them back. There's no more or very little social life for the collapsed narcissist, at least not how it used to be. People, she reasons, well, they're all fake and they're all stupid anyway. So why should she bother to be kind to them at all? And at this point, they live in a constant attack mode, really attempting to force the people around them to provide the much needed supply that they have been missing. They are overly sensitive, they're full of rage and hate. They throw temper tantrums that would rival those of a 2-year-old, and they're outright intolerant, disrespectful, and often violent in words and actions to the people around them. The previously maintained facade of a nice, cool, easygoing, friendly kind of gal, well, that falls away, and the true face of the narcissist is revealed. Rage, ugliness, and general disgust for humanity. Let's talk about female narcissists and the false self. We all know that narcissists put up a facade or create a sort of self-image for everyone to look at. They need you to think that they are superior, and they need to have the best of everything. Of course, covert narcissists, they tend to put on a little different image of them having more low self-esteem, which they actually do, and they love to play the victim. They might also appear to be quite altruistic, but they only do this in order to get attention, not to actually help anyone. Grandiose narcissists and covert narcissists project themselves differently, but they are both just as manipulative, dangerous, and each lacks emotional and compassionate empathy. All narcissists, male or female, do thrive on narcissistic supply, which they get from others who they use, manipulate, and abuse. Females in general are those mean girl narcissists that you hear about. They do whatever they can to look flawless, and narcissists who become mothers, well, they tend to manipulate and control their children, or ignore and neglect them completely. Their kids end up quickly joining the ranks of main sources of narcissistic supply, and that's why so often kids who grow up with toxic mothers do not get to experience unconditional love growing up. And that's why so many of them were abused physically, psychologically, or both. But what happens to these female narcissists when they get older? What do you think happens to them when their appearance changes, or they end up getting wrinkles? What happens to them when their children leave and move out and maybe go no contact on them? And what if they're divorced or widowed? How would a narcissist gain supply? You can see that when the entire world of the female narcissist begins to crash down around her, she is at risk of collapsing. Let's talk about the collapsed female narcissist in action. What should we expect? While they are still unable to deal with any sort of blame, criticism, or perceived disrespect of themselves, they are actively projecting their own self-hate onto the people in their lives, or maybe random targets such as people of different religions, races, or even political affiliations. This is when the gloves come off and the female narcissist blasts out her blatant bigotry and small-minded ways. You're going to see anyone who is different from the narcissist, in this case, quickly minimized and put into a not good enough box, to put it mildly. This is also when narcissists will go all out to abuse their partners, physically, mentally, or otherwise. And yes, even female narcissists will abuse their partners and quite literally anyone else who comes into their inner circle. Some female narcissists will excessively cheat, some will gamble or shop away their money, and in some cases it's worse than that, but we won't get into all that today. The loss of narcissistic supply for a female narcissist will trigger defensive behaviors, such as the whole leaving my family and starting a whole new life behavior, in which the narcissist literally flees what she sees as the scenes and remnants of her failure, and she'll literally try to start all over again. Now, in this case, she might lose not only her primary source of supply, like her spouse or partner, but also her children, her friends, and anyone else who used to offer her supply. This leads to the ultimate collapse and quite often a mental breakdown from which she may never recover. If you look at the narcissistic personality as sort of a house built on stilts, and you imagine that the lack of narcissistic supply is sort of a strong wind that comes through and blows that house down, this is what we're dealing with here. Let's talk about the choices of the collapsed narcissist. The female narcissist has two choices if she wants to move forward here. She can try to become a whole person who develops real coping skills, and in some cases, she might even obtain new supply, or she can remain a collapsed and poisonous person with everything else around her crumbling in the process. Let's get back to that house metaphor. The female narcissist could burn down all the houses around hers in order to take revenge on everyone and everything else. What it all comes down to is that regardless of the reason for her narcissistic collapse, she does not accept responsibility. She blames everyone and everything except herself. She must believe ultimately that she is a victim and that nothing is her fault. So let me ask you, do you know an aging female narcissist? If your mother was that narcissist and you decide to go no contact with her, you can bet that her world will crash down around her, if it hasn't yet. The same will go for any female narcissist you've dealt with. But when she's unable to find and secure a new worthy source of supply, guess what? She will become openly mean to literally almost anyone she deals with, and she will believe she is in the right every single time. Maybe you'd call her a Karen if you were the sort of person to call out Karens. Just remember this, a collapsing female narcissist, she feels like her world is crashing down around her. And as she desperately attempts to cling to her past, she will feel nothing but self-loathing deep down. She will blame everyone but herself for this issue. She may not even recognize that she's no longer the self she used to be. She might become more insecure than ever, and chances are that she will do her best to keep faking it. She might spend a lot of time in a plastic surgeon's office, or she might find herself competing with other women in her life in weird and uncomfortable ways. The truth is that she hates herself for what she's become, even though aging is a natural part of life. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. As someone who's 45 years old and living in a society that clearly values youth and shuts down women of a certain age, I get it. I understand why it's difficult, especially for a woman who has based her entire value on external things and the ability to manipulate people to get what she wants. But it shouldn't be that way. See, the difference between myself, you, and a female narcissist is that she would prefer that reality is covered up. She would like to hide her current self. She wants that badly. As the female narcissist ages and her beauty begins to change, and when her kids have lives of their own and she finds herself quickly losing all the sources of supply, the people who inadvertently were her shield to the world, well, she finds herself no longer able to control the people she used to, or people in general the way she used to. And now that she's no longer able to control people the way she used to, all those terrible parts of herself that she's been working so hard to hide, well, they come bubbling up to the surface. That means she'll do a whole bunch of crying, and she will not make any effort whatsoever to hide how pitiful she actually is. So expect her to hoover you at this point, because the collapsed narcissist will do whatever she can to get her kids back, to get her friends back, etc., especially when they've gone no contact, not to mention other former sources of supply. You gotta remember, she's desperate at this point, and as her world has crashed down around her, she's kind of scared. A collapsed female narcissist can be even more dangerous and even crueler than her younger counterpart, believe it or not. So be careful with her, because she will be the dangerous type who has nothing left to lose. It isn't pretty, and while it would be really easy to feel sorry for her, be careful. Don't let that pitiful appearance fool you. She is way more toxic than she appears. Don't let a collapsed female narcissist fool you into thinking she's a sweet little old lady, because my friend, she is not. She is a tiger, she's a barracuda, she's a shark in disguise. Beware. All right, now this brings me to the question of the day. And the question of the day is, do you know an aging collapsed female narcissist? And if so, what have your experiences been? Share your thoughts, share your ideas, share your experiences in the comment section below, and let's talk about it. As always, thank you so much for being a part of my day and a part of my life, and hey, thanks for letting me be a part of yours. It really does mean a lot to me. Now, before I go, make sure you take a look at the videos I'm going to leave for you right there and right there. And while you're here, hit the subscribe button right over there so we can stay connected and continue on this healing journey together. I'll see you soon.